Welcome at the Bled Strategic Forum tourism part, which is probably the most optimistic part of the forum this year. We started in a very old Slovenian Bled way with the bell. Because as you may know, Slovenia does not have many islands. It's actually the only proper island we have here at Lake Bled. But it's a very special island with a very special bell. Because there's a church on it for centuries, and they have a bell which really fulfills the greatest wishes of all. So there may be a lot of bells around at stock exchanges and so on, but this one, it really brings fine wishes to reality. And we wish today that we have a very good discussion on the new tourism global order. And we hope that our distinguished guests and panelists will contribute a great deal to the success of the second tourism part of that strategic forum. Last year we had a very successful panel dealing with more general questions, but this year we would like to focus on the prospects of new ways of partnership. And the first speaker today is, let's say, our Mr. Tourism, the Minister of Economic Development and Technology of the Republic of Slovenia, Mr. Zdravko Počivalšek. Please, Mr. Minister.
Dear participants of the second tourism panel in the frame of Bled Strategic Forum, dear colleagues, honorable guests. It's my great pleasure to welcome you at the 10th Bled Strategic Forum, Vision of New Partnerships, and the second tourism panel named Building New Partnerships for a Strong Tourism Industry. As tourism is one of the most strategic economic branches, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that has organized the Bled Strategic Forum for 10 years last year included the tourism panel in his agenda. Our distinguished guests, leading speakers from the World Tourism Organization, the Organization of the Economic Cooperation and Development, the European Commission, Pacific Asia Travel Association, China National Tourism Administration, and from China, Central and Eastern European countries Tourism Coordination Center will share us with their views about the importance of partnerships for stronger tourism industry and to better competitiveness of tourism sector. We believe that there will be an interesting discussion about the proposed topics. You are kindly welcome to share your opinion with us. The title of today's panel is very comprehensive. What kind of partnerships are important in tourism? For creating new, attractive tourist products, for assuring high level of quality, and for tourism promotion. Tourism is a strong connecting branch, a teamwork. All kinds of partnerships are important. Public, private, local, national, partnerships of tourist products and services providers, transnational and transcontinental partnerships, especially in tourism where cooperation is essential. Partnerships have become an engine for our activities and policies, business, diplomacy, and society. During our gathering, we will find out that there are various possibilities for stronger future cooperation of our countries in the field of tourism. I strongly believe that the region of Central and Southeast Europe has a great potential to become one of the leading tourist destinations on the global map. Our participants, experts, and my colleague, ministers, dear delegations from overseas countries, I wish you all an interesting and fruitful work on today's panel and many opportunities for networking and building new partnerships, business relations, and friendships in these few days. I sincerely hope that you will be able to go to one of organized sightseeing and feel Slovenia with all your senses according to our national brand, I Feel Slovenia, and to discover new opportunities for our future cooperation. I wish you a pleasant stay in our green, active and healthy Slovenia. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. You already mentioned that the slogan of Slovenian tourism, which is getting stronger and stronger, and it was extremely successful this year, is I feel love, I feel Slovenia, and both love and Slovenia are female in the Slovenian language. So when we speak about love, we speak about her, and we speak about Slovenia, we speak about her too. And that's why it's obvious that the acting director of the Slovenian Tourist Board, the driving force behind Slovenian tourism, is a she, Ms. Maja Pak. Maja, please. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, dear colleagues, warm welcome to Bled Strategic Forum Tourism Panel on behalf of the Slovenian Tourist Board. It's my great pleasure to present to you one of the greenest and one of the most diverse countries in the world, Slovenia, the power of Slovenian tourism, and our marketing priorities. Slovenia is a boutique country lying in the heart of Europe, where the Alps meet the Mediterranean, the Karst and the Pannonian Plain, and this gives Slovenia a special charm. Slovenia lies in Central Europe in the triangle of Venice, Vienna and Budapest. It is good accessible. It's one of the safest countries in the world, and it is the only European country that belongs to all three macro regions, Alpine, Danube and Adriatic region. The story of Slovenia is the story of green, active and healthy Slovenia, which allows you to feel it with all your senses. Slovenia has amazing green nature. Over 60% of its forest is covered, surface is covered with forest. It has great biodiversity, and there is protected territory. 1/3 of the territory is protected. There are many nature parks in Slovenia. The Triglav National Park is the most amazing, with Triglav the highest mountain. On the west, there is the Karst, with more than 10,000 karst caves. Postojna cave is one of the biggest and one of the most visited caves in the world. As BBC quoted last week, Postojna cave is a breathtaking underworld. Not far from here, there are beautiful Škocjan caves, UNESCO World Heritage Site. And there is Lipica Stud Farm, the home of graceful Lipicaner horses. The nature is really great in Slovenia. We are trying to develop sustainable tourism to keep it that way. And not only small destinations are going green, also Ljubljana, our capital, is doing a remarkable job on that field. And we are very proud that next year Ljubljana will become European Green Capital. In Slovenia, you can enjoy active holidays all year round in all parts of Slovenia, in the Alps, on the coast, on east and south. And the amazing changing scenery gives many opportunities to be active in green. You can go hiking, biking, kayaking, golfing, skiing. And after relaxation in green nature, you can be impressed by the culture in our historic towns. Slovenia is green, inspiring us to be active in green and active means healthy. Slovenia is also one of the richest countries in terms of water. Wherever you go, there are streams and rivers, waterfalls, lakes, curative waters, underground waters. And in Slovenia, the water can be drunk right from the tap. There are 15 spas in Slovenia oriented towards medical and wellness tourism, attracting more and more tourists. due to a unique mineral and thermal water, due to excellent service, and due to long tradition. And now, this is also one strong point of Slovenian tourism, gastronomy. We have got excellent wines as well, but I'm sure you will convince about that after our panel. And now let's have a quick look at the numbers. The tourism is definitely one of the strongest sectors in Slovenia, representing 30% of the GDP, generating 9 million of overnights and participating 40% of export services. Slovenia also ranks 36 on the WEF Travel and Tourism Competitiveness Index. Our key markets are Italy, Austria, Germany, Russian Federation, Netherlands. Together they make half of our nights, and the countries with highest growth rates are Korea, China, and other Asian countries. Our main segments are health resorts, which represent 1/3 of our nights, followed by mountain resorts, seaside resorts, and Ljubljana with 11%. And for the end, I would just like to point out our marketing priorities. First one, increasing the awareness of I Feel Slovenia brand on our target markets. Then digital content marketing, which is becoming the center of our activities. Then innovative tourist products based on the principle of sustainability. And of course, partnership marketing in order to achieve synergy effect. And partnership is the main theme of today's panel. Slovenia is an attractive country with excellent location between the Alps, Mediterranean, Pannonian Plain, between the Slavic words, Germanic words, Roman, and therefore is playing a very important role in different marketing platforms. We are very active in European Travel Commission, in different cross-border marketing platforms like Alpe Adria Trail, like Experience Croatia Feel Slovenia project, Via Alpina, and so on and so on. And of course, we are active in tourism cooperation 16+1. We are very proud that these days we are hosting the second high-level meeting. I'm looking forward to that cooperation. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all very pleasant stay here, successful days here in Bled, and Feel Slovenia. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. You saw the beautiful face of Slovenian tourism, and of course Maya, I mean. But we would like to give a broader picture today, again. So how does Slovenia and the region and Europe in general fits to the new tourism global order? And we're so delighted to have really top global tourism professionals with us today. Starting with the panel is Mr. Marcio Favila. He's the Executive Director for the Operational Programs and Institutional Relations at the World Tourism Organization. He's Brazilian by origin. He made possible that Brazil is such a driving force in world tourism. Thank you, Mr. Favila, to join us on stage, and we're eager to hear your presentation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister, esteemed colleagues, Her Excellency Minister from the Czech Republic, everybody, I wish a great day here in Bled and great discussions. It's an honor to be here today, to be part of the tourism panel on building new partnerships for a strong tourism industry in what is already the 10th edition of the Bled Strategic Forum. I'm sure that everybody is very and has been very inspired by the great destination in which we have the discussions and the great hospitality that we have already felt from our hosts. Nowadays, there is great need for concerted action among governments and between governments and private sector and civil society. It's also true for tourism. Tourism must be well managed to generate the benefits we all want to fulfill its local and global potential. So this forum could not, therefore, come at a better time. Sorry. So, as you may know, UNWTO is the UN specialized agency responsible for the promotion of responsible, sustainable, and universally accessible tourism. However, we don't promote tourism for the sake of tourism. We promote tourism as a tool for economic growth and inclusive and sustainable development. We have 156 member states, 6 territories, and what makes us unique among UN agencies is that we also have over 450 members from the private sector, from the civil society, academia, tourism associations, and local tourism authorities. And I think that this cross-section of membership is a nice reflection of what the tourism sector itself. We've gathered today to talk about partnership, so I think it's worth noting that UNWTO, being a member-based organization, is by its very nature a platform for cooperation, seeking to facilitate a political and technical framework both at national levels and globally for driving forward our 2 main pillars, competitiveness with quality, or in other words, how to make tourism grow, and sustainability and ethics, which is about how you manage that growth. This is not from Bled, it's from before. So a broad perspective on the, let's say, the developments of tourism in the last 20 years. So as a long-term growth trend, we see that tourism more than doubled in terms of international tourism arrivals in these past 2 decades. So last year, we reached 1,133 million arrivals. These arrivals generated $1,245 billion. Now, if you also consider what the international transport has generated in terms of receipts for country, that comes to close to $1.5 trillion for the whole year, which is about $4 billion per day that tourism, international tourism generates in terms of receipts. Last year, we had an increase of about $48 billion in receipts as compared to 2013, and 46 million more international arrivals than in 2013. That is equivalent to 1 whole Italy of international arrivals in 1 year. And Italy is the 5th international destination. So just the difference from 13 to 2014 was equivalent to 1 Italy. So this is just to pass to convey the message of how much tourism has been growing in these recent years in all this challenging environment we are living. Now, we should never forget that besides these 1 billion, more than 1 billion international arrivals, around the world we have more than 6 billion domestic tourism trips as well. So domestic tourism plus international tourism, these are the 2 combined, tourism overall is a real important global economic force. So that makes tourism respond for approximately 10% of world GDP, generate 1 in every 11 jobs, $1.5 trillion in exports. Tourism responds for 6% of world's exports of goods and services. In fact, it's the 4th item in international trade, after oil, chemicals, and food. It's tourism, 4th, and the biggest single item in the international trade of services. So our sector is a real great force in the world economy, even though many times it's not perceived as such and does not deserve the political attention we feel that it deserves. It should deserve. So coming to, let's say, to last year's overall results, especially for Europe. Europe received 584 million international arrivals. That is 51% of international arrivals, and 41% of overall receipts. Now, in the last, let's say, 2.5 years, and here we see Europe and the 4 different sub-regions of Europe as we classify them, and Slovenia for us is southern Mediterranean Europe. We see that overall Europe has doing very, very well in the last few years, growing more than expected, considering all the economic challenge we have in the continent. And I want to take the opportunity and congratulate Slovenia for its great results in the last 10 years. It's a really important and strong trajectory in tourism, international tourism development, much above average, European average and regional and sub-regional average. And this year it has grown above 11%. If we see the long-term trajectory from 25 million international arrivals in 1950, we expect to reach 1.4 billion in 2020 and 1.8 billion in 2030. So according to our estimates, Europe will add on average 13 million arrivals every year between now and 2030. So which will bring the almost 600 million arrivals of this year that we will see to 750 million arrivals in 2030. So in terms of source of tourism growth, it's very clear the position of China as a source market. So it's the fastest growing market that we've seen for a long time now. In the last 10 years, it has grown in average above 20%. It's the world's top spender since 2012. Last year, Chinese spent 165 billion abroad, and that was 36 more billion than the year before, almost a 30% increase to the previous year. So, and the Chinese expenditure abroad responds to 13% of worldwide receipts. So there are other important source markets from emerging countries like Russia, Brazil, or India, but China is really the top story and the most important emerging markets and international source markets. But let's not take for granted the important traditional markets that we have in Europe, the United States, and especially in Europe, which are the closest markets that you have. So if we look at our estimates for the years to come, until 2030, in this graph, we see very clearly that Europe will continue to be the most important source of international tourism, even though Asia and Pacific will grow remarkably in the coming years. So don't take a look at the other source markets outside Europe, but don't let go what you have here close to you, and keep on working, keep on marketing in European source markets. So this graph shows very clearly that the overall in the world, and then if we take region by region, the source of international tourism to any region, the most important source comes from the same region. About 80% of arrivals in Europe, and that is valid for the different regions of the world, come from the same region. For Europe comes from Europe, and so on and so on. Now, if we take a look at only the Asian Pacific as source markets to Europe, we see that, yes, it's growing very much in the last 10 years. If we look at the column first to the right, total international tourism arrivals to Europe in the last 10 years, 9 years, we see, for example, that it was in average 2.8% growth, annual growth, but from Asian Pacific, it was 6.7% annual growth. If we look at what has happened towards the southern and Mediterranean Europe, in the last 9 years, there was a growth of international tourism. Looking at the column to the right here, it was at 3.6% per year, but from Asia Pacific, it was 10.9%. So yes, Europe is the main source for European markets, but from Asian Pacific, there is a very strong growth in the last 9 years. So it's, let's say, the focus that you're giving here in BLED this year to the Chinese market, overall to Asian Pacific, is correct. And you have to see how you can best tap that market. There is a lot of knowledge and research done on new emerging markets, the Chinese, the Russian, Brazilian, Latin American, that UNWTO has done with ETC. The information is there, but partnerships are fundamental. Partnerships are fundamental, and it's important to try to understand and to think and discuss how Slovenia and other European countries can use the available knowledge to grow existing markets and attract new markets. Now, many factors determine the competitiveness of a destination, but we have to really see the importance of partnerships and how partnerships are certainly one factor of critical importance, not least because tourism is such a multi-sectoral activity, but also it requires multi-sectoral solutions. When we talk about partnerships in tourism, we do not only mean partnerships between public and the private sector, but also across the government at the central level and between the central government and regional and local governments, local administrations, with the academia, international organizations, NGOs, and others that have the capacity to maximize tourism's potential. So governance is key in tourism. How you set up your governance system within the country and at the different spheres of government, with the private sector, and also internationally. So partnerships need to cross borders because many of the challenges and opportunities we face are regional and global in nature. I would also like to say that there are several examples now of European macro-regional strategies, and my colleague Pedro Tun from the European Commission may want to address this, but these regional strategies all include regional tourism development as one of their pillars. We have the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region, the EU strategy for the Danube region, the EU strategies for the Adriatic and the Ionian, and for the Alpine region. These are some very important examples. Now, Slovenia is part of all of those strategies except for the Baltic Sea region. As such, you are perfectly positioned to leverage these transnational platforms to develop strategic partnerships. Moreover, the Regional Cooperation Council and its Southeast Europe Strategy 2020 recognize tourism as a regional priority sector. But going beyond, and as I was talking to the minister and his team yesterday, they are looking at new possibilities of partnerships, and there are different possibilities than those already exist. For example, discussing with other countries from all parts of the world, the small countries with small populations, what do they have in common? What are their common challenges? How to tap regional markets and international markets. So there are different possibilities that you should explore, and this is a good idea also to move forward in tourism. So in conclusion, as a few conclusions, ladies and gentlemen, let me say that with over 1 billion tourists traveling, more than 1 billion tourists traveling the world, we have enormous opportunities for reaping the benefits of tourism growth, but also a serious responsibility to make it sustainable. That is, to neutralize or to minimize any potential negative impacts that tourism may bring. Tourism has to deliver more than it takes from the cultural and from the natural assets of destinations. Partnerships are no doubt a critical mechanism to achieve this goal, and Slovenia is well placed to build on the many partnership platforms which already exist and create new ones. We were asked for a concluding thought to lead into the roundtable, and so for this I would like to say that it's not enough to simply create a partnership. Last night we heard the former president Danilo Turk speaking about partnerships and the different nuances partnerships can have. So what is needed is that commonly agreed objectives are really translated from political statements into actionable, practical, and understandable actions at all levels. This is the key, and this is what all our efforts must consider. I trust that by creating participatory models for decision and policy making, processes for tourism development, management and promotion, Slovenian tourism, its domestic and international partners, will be on the right path to developing tourism in a competitive and sustainable manner. Another panel of the BLED Forum is called "The Development is a Global Partnership." And that's very much true. It's clear, it's also clear from the forthcoming Sustainable Development Goals. Development of sustainable tourism also is a global partnership. Let me remind you that we have tourism in 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals to be approved by the international community in this month of September. We have tourism in the goal number 8, that deals with economic growth. We have it in number 14, which is about sustainability, and 14 on maritime resources. So we need not only a global partnership in tourism, but also we need local, national, regional, and international partnerships. I'm sorry if I have taken longer than what I wanted, but I hope we all have a fruitful day and debate here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Favila. We will, of course, hear you later on in the discussion, going from the biggest organization we have, WTO, to a little bit less big, but still big, is the OECD. So I'm pleased to welcome on stage Mr. Alain Dupeyrat, a long-term head of tourism unit at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Please.
Good morning, all. And thank you very much for the invitation. I think it's a great pleasure for me to be there. We were already participating in the first forum last year. It was not me. And we definitely see a lot of value in participating in such debates. So the topic we have today is about partnership, and I will try to move quickly to this topic in my short presentation. There are many different ways, we can look at the value of tourism today. I think one of the previous speakers from Slovenia was mentioning, for example, the importance of tourism in exports, and the 41%, which is double of the OECD average, for tourism as an export. We talk a lot about domestic and the importance of domestic tourism in OECD countries. This figure is very significant. 78% of tourism economy is domestic on average in OECD countries. Of course, the picture will be somewhat different for a small economy, but this is also very important. New figures we are developing with the World Trade Organization relates to the added value of tourism for domestic economy. This is a project which is called TIVA, Trade in Value Added, and this is a very interesting project for tourism because it clearly demonstrates the important economic benefits that tourism leaves to domestic, to national, economy, which is usually above average in comparison to other economies. And looking at this, I think, when thinking about partnership, I think in all of these areas, partnerships can be helpful in supporting either the domestic economy, and I will show one or two examples, in working on the tourism value chain, and in order to gain more benefits from tourism, and so on and so on. Of course, and I think this was one of your questions for the panel, how strong is tourism today? I think we, as it has been said, we have many important challenges, in front of us. I think I will not come back to the sustainability challenge and the climate change challenge that has been discussed today and yesterday also in different panels, but certainly the competitiveness challenge is a big one. And coming from the OECD, which regroups, some of the most developed economies in the world, we see this challenge as on the top of our agenda, not only in tourism, for many economic areas, but of course tourism being growing so quickly, being so internationalized, if our highly developed economies want to remain competitive, in the global tourism marketplace, definitely we have to look at this competitiveness challenge, which means looking at the quality of a product, looking at the price issue, and so on and so on. So this is definitely on top. We also have to think about tourism growth which would be more inclusive. This is important for highly developed economies, but this is maybe even more important for developing countries, where we know that economic benefits to tourism do not always, stay in local communities. So we have to work on all these issues in order to make tourism also more inclusive, because we know that with tourism we have an extraordinary economic tool which can support, the local economies in particular, Safety and security issues were discussed a lot yesterday in different panels, and I think we all agree that this is also a major challenge for us. What we say at the OECD level, and the OECD is a multidisciplinary organization with 34 member countries from United States to Korea to Japan, Australia, New Zealand, many European countries. We said that we need active policies in an area like tourism. And what we observe is that there is a need to revisit somewhat, the policy framework which is supporting tourism growth. At the OECD, we have been doing quite a bit of work on, what does partnership mean? How can a partnership be successful? And we have been doing this work for local development, for different, areas of policies. And I think we already pointed a few issues this morning, which shows that first we need a clear and flexible strategy. We need where we are going. We need to have a long-term vision, but we also need to have clear objectives. Below this broad mission. We need good governance. I think, Marcio, you mentioned this, and I will come back to this, but this is key, of course, for partnership. And we need a minimum of resources. But first of all, we need mutual confidence and trust among the partners, and we need a strong agreement on the direction and the approach. I'm sure the debate will come back a bit more on some of these issues. As I was saying, tourism policy development, is an increasingly complex process. This is very clear, certainly, and most of my work is on policy development, and we see that, for example, the alignment of objective is more and more difficult, even in governments. If you take the economic ministry, the tourism ministry, the transport ministry, the foreign affairs ministry, and sometimes some of these ministries have different, of course, tourism integrated, this is becoming more and more difficult. We, of course, have the horizontal nature of tourism, and the way we link tourism to transport, the way we link tourism to environment, education, innovation, and so on, which is difficult. But also, as we can see today, cities and regions are more and more active, and so we also have to better align vertically. All our economies are interconnected, and this creates an additional challenge and in terms of partnership. But also we have some areas which are strongly interconnected, like climate change and so on. So we need to develop a broader approach, in terms of partnership that will enable to develop win-win solution. And this is not so easy. I've just highlight briefly, a few examples, and I'm not saying if they are successful or not, but they are existing, and maybe later we can go a bit more into this discussion. So here we have a cross-border cooperation on transport with a Trans-Danube cooperation, and I think we discussed this, for example, in the recent International Forum on Transport, which was held in Leipzig. And the idea is really to improve the accessibility of the Danube, to disseminate the concept of sustainable mobility and tourism. This is an intersectoral approach which regroup tourism and transport, and which involve a large number of partners and stakeholders. So this partnership is definitely about good practice collection, but also about how to develop sustainable transport offers, for example. The area of visa and travel facilitation has been also an area of partnership development in recent years. Here we have the Ireland-UK cooperation, but we could mention, for example, the Poland-Ukraine cooperation. with the European Football Championship, or here the Australia-New Zealand cooperation in 2015. All of this cooperation has proven to be fruitful in terms of results and in terms of bringing, additional benefits from tourism to the economy. Promotion, but I'm sure my colleague from PATA will say more on this, is another area of promotion. I'm not an expert. I'm not so sure it's always that easy. Here we have a case where you have two countries which are quite close to the other, and from what I heard, Tourism Ireland and Visit Britain have a rather successful partnership in this, But we know that some previous example, I remember one between Spain, Italy, and France, which, to my understanding, has never really worked, because the three countries were just probably too complex, to agree on a common objective and how to join promotion. Cultural Route Program, I will not speak about it. I think many of you know, but I think we can see this as a rather successful partnership in the long term, because this is there for the last 30 years, and this has enabled a number of countries to work together, Domestic, as I was saying, is also very important. Here we have a new, we can call it a partnership, which is a contrat destination contract in France, and here, for example, you have the example of the First World War centenary contract, and here it's about partnership at destination level, public-private partnership, bringing the industry on board, agreeing on a number of concrete actions to improve the quality of the offer, the visitor welcome and the communication. So this is very operational, in other words. I think it's still too early in the process, but definitely, this is something worth to pursue, and this is very important. Here, I think they work on the value chain, So this was the first one. There are a number of others, like the Loire Valley, the Mont Saint-Michel, and so on, which are at development now, and this is a very good way for the public sector to work with the private sector on such issue. Another example would be, for example, on sustainable tourism activities with the Lapland Arctic Specialization Program. And here they are definitely working on the value chain approach, to see what kind of product and service development package, can be developed in partnership. Looking forward, in terms of education and research, in order to adjust this product to the future demand, and also trying to put innovation, at the center of this discussion. So all of this partnership definitely show, the diversity of what can be a partnership, which can of course be international, but can also be domestic, can be public only, but can also be public-private. At the OECD level, we are mainly working on partnership between different arms of government, tourism policy, partnering with, for example, education policy. To conclude, and this would be my last slide, a few things. One important issue, I think, is the policy design, and we have to better understand, the linkages or the interlinkages, the synergies and the trade-off between tourism and other policies. And this is very important for all governments before moving into this direction of partnership. And we have to take also the long-term perspective. It seems easy, but it's not always the case because of different policy cycles and so on. So this is very important. Governance, key, definitely to take this issue correctly and to leverage, the policy synergies and partnership. Communication is very important. We have a very fragmented and dispersed sector, so communication is very important to create this cohesion and this coherence, between different branches of the industry or different arms of the government, proactively engaging with industry. It seems evident, but of course we have to say this, and this is also something important. And of course, I think we international organizations also have to work closer with one another, and I think this is the trend we are taking definitely for the last 10 to 15 years, but we can do more in working together in order to support all of this cooperation. So I would stop there. On the website, you can find a number of documents which can be very interesting also for you, like, for example, Effective Policies for Tourism Growth, which is also about partnership at policy level. And also, just to mention that all of our data now are available online. The OECD is moving to open data now, and tourism is already open data for all of you, so I would encourage you to have a look. And of course, if you have discussion, we can continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dupeyrat, a Frenchman from the tourist powerhouse of Paris. Now, we had a transcontinental organization like OECD. Now we're going to the old continent, to Europe. I welcome on stage Mr. Pedro Ortun Silvan, Principal Advisor at the Directorate General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and Small and Medium Enterprises. A Spaniard working for a long time in Belgium and a long-term professional at the European Commission. Please.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to this interesting and hopefully useful event. I'm very glad to be here for many different reasons. I think the topic is an important one. The panelists are important. Also, on a personal level, it was already the last EU member state which I visited. I never came to Slovenia, so it was a very good opportunity to complete my 28, more or less, deep knowledge of the member states, the European Union, and also with this location, it is impressive. Hopefully, you have done it well to put down the stores in order not to be distracted by the landscape over there. Huh? So, as I said, the topic is the partnership issue is a very important topic for any policy related and for any activity in our modern economies, in our modern societies, but in particular for tourism is a key one, and it has been in the roots of any type of attempt of a European tourism policy which we have tried to develop since ever, in particular since tourism appears for the first time in the Maastricht Treaty, in the European treaties. It appears for the first time in '92, the Maastricht Treaty, given the opportunity to do things for tourism, but only agreed at unanimity level. And my predecessors until 2000 and myself and my teams from 2000 onwards, we always have tried to promote public-private, intra-private, and all-together partnerships, because it's the only way to proceed and to make advancements in this type of socio-economic activities. The results have been difficult. In the 90s, there was not very good mindset yet for good cooperation and partnership between the member states and between industry partners. There was a big rivalry between countries emitting tourists, the northern, central and northern member state, the southern one receiving tourists, and there were different interests behind it and so on. We tried to, from 2000 onwards, to promote a more balanced and a more transparent and equilibrated type of cooperation, and I think we have made important progress in there. We started progressively to increase the financial contribution from the modest, very modest financial contribution from the European Commission, in addition to the European structural funds, which are the main financing tools, providing millions and billions even of euros but more managed at the national and regional level. But to promote transnational European type of projects, we have started to increase with the support of the European Parliament, especially from 2007 onwards. And with the change in the treaty, which was provoked by the Lisbon Treaty in 2009, which started entering into force in November 2009, which gave and consolidated the competence for tourism at European level with a big difference, which is that we could take measures and adopt initiatives with qualified majority, which has been a big change on it, because that has allowed us to, for instance, purely on the financial tools, to pass from 1-2 million euros per year, which was ridiculous. Now we have reached the last year between the 3 million that we get every year from the Parliament, from the more normal European budget lines, European budgets, the Enterprise Innovation Program and the COSME Competitiveness and SME programs. We have reached a total amount of 10-12 million euros per year, which allows us to do things, to facilitate, to promote, in particular, development of public-private partnerships between private and public partners of different member states. We always put as a condition that there should be a minimum of partners from 3, 4, or 5, depending on the topics, member states. And it works. It started slowly in 2010. We got, I don't know if I remember well, 40 to 50 proposals. And now in the last 2015 calls, we have got 250 proposals from different public and private partners on the topics that we are promoting, which are, you might know, some of you, low and medium season type of tourism products, especially in the senior, and now from this year on was in the youth market segment, sustainable tourism, cultural tourism, what else? Accessible tourism. So we are trying to find out concrete themes in order to facilitate to work on concrete actions, because if we talk too much in a very general type of a level, we don't reach concrete, and we are starting to get some results. We still miss, and it is very difficult, I will elaborate a bit on that, the big cooperation and the big partnerships between a much wider number of member states. We have had, by the way, and Marcio has made reference, and also Alain, to the macro-regional strategies, because we have seen, and you have seen, the member states have seen that it is very difficult to build up partnerships involving the 28 member states. When you have 4 or 5 big countries like Germany, like big not countries, tourism destinations, like France, Spain, Italy, by order of a number of international arrivals, UK and Germany now, which has taken over the 4th, it's very difficult to make them work together, and also between them and the smaller and medium-sized member states is not easy. And that might be one of the reasons why you have some Central and Eastern European member states have decided to join forces 2 years ago, if I remember well, under the leadership of Hungary, but with big support by some of the Central and Eastern European countries, to try to promote some concrete cooperation and partnerships with, and you have chosen the biggest growing market, which is China. And we will see later on what is being done, and this afternoon also and tomorrow you have some meetings on this. So this has been a bit the trends and the evolution, a positive evolution. I said before in the preparatory meeting we had with the minister that already in a policy document, the communication which was issued in 2007, I just went through when cleaning my office in the last days, to a policy document which was, the title was, towards a stronger partnership for European tourism. So the issue of a stronger partnership was already there since ever in the Commission. So let's now try to see how to improve and how to make the existing and the new partnership which are needed, which be needed forever, I would say, in this type of activity, how they can improve and what we could do from the European Commission side, but also from all the public and private partners. We have, all of us, I think we have a common goal in terms of tourism policy, which is to for us, at least at European level, we do have the main objectives. There are two objectives and one common goal in my view, which is to facilitate what we call the responsible competitiveness of the European tourism companies, to facilitate and to promote the sustainable growth of the European of the tourism activity in Europe, and if possible, because we have some responsibility also in other markets, in non-European markets, with the main goal, which is to have and to provide to any type of tourists, be it European, not European, the best tourism experience. That's our main goal. And for that, we have worked in the past, and we are working, and our new commissioner, the Polish lady, Ms. Elżbieta Bieńkowska, is promoting a set of initiatives in different areas. Most of you have gone through them, starting also in particular with the streamlining of the very complex, very not always coherent regulatory and administrative framework. There are some areas in taxation, in transport, in the whole new digital world in which we have not yet a common and a sufficiently coherent regulatory and administrative framework at European, at national, at regional, even at local level. There's still a lot, and that should be, and also for this, there is a need of a stronger partnership, not only between public authorities, as you have said, but also with the input of the private ones. And in the European Commission, we do pay a lot of attention to consult and to involve all the partners in that. So just to conclude, there are many other areas I will not elaborate, but what I mean is that we need, for successful partnerships, we need basically 3 or 4 elements. We need a high-level commitment, and a much higher level and much stronger commitment from the ministers, from the CEOs, and so on. We do not have yet, at European level, a sufficient, tourism is not yet recognized, even in the most important tourist destinations, as a sufficiently important economic and policy area. Our tourism industries, there are quite a few, not even 10 sufficiently large European groups of the tourism industry with activities in more than 2 or 3 member states. If you count them, Accor, TUI, Thomas Cook, and Arche, very few. So tourist businesses are too small, too local, too regional. And for this type of big partnerships, we should need stronger and CEOs with some more medium-term and more global, at least European and global vision. We have to devote sufficient human and financial resources. And there is a good example, and I will finish with this, in terms of the joint promotion of important new tourism markets and products in main third countries markets, the American example. America, after the 9/11 tragedy in New York and in Washington, the tourism was falling down dramatically. It took 3-4 years to the American industry to reshape, to take decisions, to start working together. It took 3 or 4 years for them to build up the new US travel industry organization, which made a very good set of proposals to President Obama. And they have come with these reinforced partnerships, starting by the private sector. They have come to facilitating and designing a public-private partnership in creating the new brand USA, with a huge budget for promoting USA in third market, even though they are also big federal state destinations, California, Florida, New York, and so on. But they have put aside their differences, their competitions between themselves, and they have decided jointly to make. They have gotten a big support from the President Obama with the $10 out of the 14 we pay to reach the US, to build up a budget, an annual budget for joint promotion activities in third countries markets of between 100 the first year and this year $150 million. Political willingness, sufficient resources, a good mindset, trust in each other, and but in Europe we are very special, we are very complicated, big and small countries, but we need and we will from our side keep on working to facilitate these common views and these common projects and these common and stronger. We need stronger partnerships from both sides, from public, from private, and all together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ortun Silvan. See you on stage again quite soon, but moving from Europe to Asia and the Pacific region. Before we start the discussion, I heartily welcome Mr. Mario Ardi, Chief Executive Officer of the Pacific Asia Travel Association. A Canadian by origin, but a citizen of the world with a lot of passports and countries he lived in. Slovenia is one of the few countries he hasn't lived so far.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Mr. Minister, I have a secret to share with you. 48 hours ago, I fell in love with a beautiful girl, and her name is Slovenia. This is my first time in your country, and truly it is beautiful. After my first hour arriving at the hotel, I was sharing with my wife beautiful sceneries on Skype of what I was seeing. And I actually told her, I said, take the first flight, come and join me. We stay here and we never leave again. On that note, I have the challenge to give you the perspective of Asia Pacific in 10 minutes. That is a huge challenge because there is a lot to say. But I will do my very best to keep within the timeline. So let's move on to the next item. Is who are we? Who is the Pacific Asia Travel Association, PATA? We're a non-profit organization. We're a bridge between the public and the private sector. We have 88 states that are members of our country, and I'm very pleased and very thankful that Slovenia is their newest member of our organization. So thank you very much for joining us. We have over 900 corporate members around the world. Also, they're actually part of the organization. 800 is the official numbers. This slide was put up a few weeks ago, so a few people have joined. But roughly about 900 corporate members around the world who are within our organizations. In every activity that we do, we try to bring both parties around the table to have meaningful discussions about partnership, how we work together to develop sustainable tourism. That is who we are. I knew that my previous colleagues would probably give you a lot of different numbers, and I'm actually very glad our numbers actually do match. But this will be the only slide I will share with you, which is specifically relating to these numbers. As you have heard from Marcio before, last year we've achieved 1.2 billion international visitor arrivals around the world. 100 million Chinese have traveled overseas last year. We expect 150 million Chinese will be traveling overseas by the end of 2019. Some say it might even go to 200 million. But the numbers are big. 150, 200, it's still a big number. It's a lot of people. And it presented some challenges to some destination. At an event earlier this year, I stood in front of a very distinguished crowd of individuals. And I've spent most of my life in the private sector, in the corporate life. And these are words you never think of saying in front of an audience before when you work for a corporate. Do we have too much growth? Something you never think about before. But in some particular islands and countries in the Pacific and in Asia, growth is becoming actually a challenge. And one of the big challenges we have to face is actually that this is an issue that we as an industry created. We created icons. Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Bali as a destination, the Grand Palace in Thailand, in Bangkok, and so many other destinations around the world have been created as iconic destinations for people to visit with too much crowds and too many people in that particular destination. However, you may drive 10, 15 minutes or an hour within these destinations, and you will find beautiful places that barely have any tourists, very, very few. I call this the disproportionate growth of tourism. I believe that as an industry, we have a duty to help to spread the wealth across the country, across the region, so that smaller destinations and communities can enjoy and reap the benefits of the economic growth that tourism can actually bring. Now, at PATA, we try to make actions out of the advocacy themes that we put together. This is one that we actually are leading the efforts, and we started earlier this year. So we started a competition. It's called the PATA CEO Challenge, my challenge to the industry, to find a solution to promote smaller destinations, to encourage people to go and explore and visit beautiful sites like this, and many others that are, I'm sure, within Slovenia that I've yet discovered. This challenge is in partnership with TripAdvisor, and we're actually offering $1 million in prizes of marketing campaign to any small destinations who can convince us that they've got the potential for growth in the respective markets. 2 prizes of $500,000 will go to these destinations. You have until the 1st of October to apply. I do have to give you one notice, though, that countries and capital cities are not eligible to this contest. It is specifically dedicated to the secondary destinations and tertiary destinations to really help promote them. So this was my 1 minute of commercial in terms of activities of PADA. But I actually seriously believe that actually this can make a difference in creating this awareness around this issue that we need to resolve as an industry together. Tourism flow. We can learn from the successes of Europe in Asia, how we create flows of tourists traveling from one destination to another to go and discover multiple destinations within a country or within a specific region. Slovenia is a small entity, a small country, neighboring lots of other beautiful places as well. How can we combine the flow of tourists to go across borders and explore multiple destinations as they travel together? It's a challenge. I don't have the answer yet, but it is a challenge that we can actually probably look at together, and I hope we have the opportunity to discuss it a bit later today. Diversification of source markets and products are actually very important. I'll give you one example of one particular country where I actually spoke at an event recently where when I was preparing my presentations and numbers, I actually nearly fell off my chair. I was looking at Korea. Now, South Korea is a very interesting country. 69% of all the arrivals in Korea are in the capital city, in Seoul. 69 of the 14 million people that go and visit Korea stays in the capital. Never go and explore anywhere else outside the capital city. It creates an enormous burden on the capital city where they do not have enough rooms available for all the people visiting. They've been growing at a rate of 2 million visitors a year in the last year. Predictions are they will probably grow to 20 million within the next few years. How will they cope with that amount of travelers? 43% of all the tourists visiting Korea are from China. Now, in a sense, we should be thankful for that. And another, it presents a risk. What if there's a pandemic? What if there's a crisis of any kind that affects the tourism coming from one single destination? We need to diversify the source markets. I'm giving Korea as one example, but there are many other destinations that have exactly the same scenario. The source markets needs to be diversified so that when there's an issue somewhere, you don't suffer as much as you would otherwise. You need to diversify your source markets, your product as well, to make it interesting. Now, I was very pleased by your presentation about Slovenia. The skiing, the food, the trekking, there's so many activities and beautiful sites to visit. You have the perfect diversification of product here in Slovenia that actually can offer services and product and reasons to visit to many, many different people who are looking for different aspects when they actually travel. That is a good example of how the product diversification is very important. I spoke briefly before about multi-destinations and the importance of that too. How can we create themes and routes and trails that would encourage people to travel from one region to another, from one country to another? I'm sure you've heard of the Silk Road project in Asia before, where countries are coming together to actually encourage people to travel from one destination to another. And I'm actually thankful to UNWTO for leading some of the efforts in that area of bringing these countries together to create the themes that would encourage people to travel from one destination to another. If you look at the history, there are many, many other themes like that that can be created here in Europe and across the world. The China factor. The phenomenal growth of outbound tourism in China is fascinating and interesting. We're all looking at it and we're all hoping that we can grab one small share of the outbound tourism market in China. Would be greatly beneficial to all of us because the numbers are so big. So how do we grab it? How do we get our share of that huge market? It is a very challenging question. If you go back to one of my previous slides about the bucket list, I've asked some of the top tour operators in China just a week ago when I was visiting Sichuan and Beijing. And there's no scientific number, at least that we hold, and possibly some of my colleagues here do have, of how many of the 100 million Chinese tourists going overseas are first-time travelers. But their point of view from the tour operators, their gut feeling is that 50% of the 100 millions are first-time travelers, never traveled outside of China before. I'm referring also to the international travelers. That presents a challenge because the bucket list phenomena is really important for the Chinese. They want to go to the places, New York, Paris, Rome, London. They're the first place that they want to go when they travel overseas. The second time, they probably want to carry on that bucket list as well. But there's still another 50 million that have actually traveled multiple times. And there's an opportunity for you to grab maybe one small share of that market. And the importance is really to work with the tour operators in China. They're the one who drive the decisions. They're the one who motivates the individuals to travel overseas. So, in conclusion, we were asked to leave you with a thought. My thought that I'd like to share with you, or at least the word of wisdom I can share, I hope, with you, is the importance of intergovernmental relationship and partnership. If you as a destination decide to drive one particular area of your country, Bled, for example, or any other destinations, that this will be a key focus for the growth of tourism in the future, and you want to grow by X percentage and etc., you make a plan. But that plan cannot be made alone by the tourism department. Every other entities need to work very closely with you. You need to think about the water consumption, the electricity, the road infrastructure, waste management, and all the other components that actually affects tourism. It is not a silo decision that needs to be made by one organization. All of you need to work jointly together, both the public sector as well as the private sector, to make this a reality and make it sustainable. On that note, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Radi. You can stay on the floor because we'll start a discussion now. So the places are ready. I also would like to invite again on stage Mr. Favila Dupera and Mr. Ortun Silvan, and of course our minister, Mr. Počivaušek. And I'm very pleased also to announce on stage Dr. Adam Rusinko, the Deputy State Secretary for National Economy of Hungary, who is in charge of tourism, and of course Mr. Wei Tao, member of leadership of the China National Tourist Administration. Mr. Wei will of course speak Chinese, so you're kindly invited to take your headphones if you still don't have them. We will shortly open the floor also to our audience here, but we heard many times that we need to have clear objective, and we have a clear objective here to start with a fantastic lunch, with a fantastic view in less than an hour. And we know that the food will be great, but we would also like to nourish our audience in between with fresh ideas and of course your thoughts about the cooperation within tourism as a part of a new global tourism order. We still haven't heard Dr. Rusinko here. We know that your country is in charge of cooperating tourism on the 16+1 level. You also have a lot of personal experience with tourism. I think you started as a tourist guide in the beautiful town of Budapest, not so many years ago because you're still young. But what is your direct experience with this 16+1 idea in this year since this project started on the field of tourism?
Thank you very much for this question. It's really very important. I just started restarted my career in the public administration almost exactly 1 year ago when the Prime Minister of Hungary nominated me as the Deputy State Secretary in charge of tourism. And I said three thoughts, three major slogans that I would like to work on that should be really important in our everyday work as well. These were the using our opportunities very well, for example, the funds of the European Union, bettering quality in tourism, and partnership. So this is a favorite topic of mine, of course. And that's why I need to tell you that such macro-regional cooperations like this Alpe-Adria or Danube strategy that have been mentioned already are really very, very important for such countries like the Central and Eastern European ones, because none of us are really able to achieve our desired tourism results. We are alone. We are not really able to attract as many overseas and especially Chinese tourists as we would like to. This has been also mentioned that China is the largest sending market in the world since 2013 or 14. So last year, the number of foreign trips exceeded 100 million, and that's why we have to know that individually the Central and Eastern European countries and our offers are not really considerable enough. Not simply not big enough for this Chinese market. As Mr. Ortun mentioned as well, the vast majority of the companies active in tourism are SMEs. So there are just a small number of really big multinational companies active in Europe in the European tourism. The Chinese tourists, as other overseas tourists as well, I'm quite experienced in this topic because I started my career as a tour guide when I was 19, and I was working for quite many companies like Trafalgar or Insight for American, South African, Asian, Pacific, and other tourists, and they were visiting. Just like the Chinese tourists today, they were visiting 4 to 5 destinations, 4 to 5 countries during their stay in Europe, and that means almost exactly 2 days in every city, in every destination. And we are, frankly, we are lucky enough that the Chinese Prime Minister nominated Hungary as the coordinator between the 16 Central and Eastern European countries and China in the tourism area. And what I must tell you, as Mr. Počivalšek, how he started, how the minister started. Tourism is really a very important factor, is a key driver in our economic growth, and that's why we need to focus on attracting always more and more tourists. We are together. We are really colorful enough because besides the three S, the sea, sand, and sun, tourism, we have a very rich and very attractive cultural and natural heritage, beautiful cities, thermal waters, spas. So we really have very, very special tourism products all around this region of Europe. I know that in Hungary we have a strong political and administrative support. I can feel that also in other countries. It's very important. But besides the political and support and this state administration activity, we have to put this activity towards the business sector. So we have to facilitate their contacts between each other. So that's why one of our major activities was in March this year that we organized the China Tourism Information Day. It was really a great success. More than 150 companies from China and Central and Eastern Europe met each other, and there were many business contacts were born. So we have to develop the business relations, and plus we launched the official website, which is called the CEEC-China.travel. It's very important because that's how the European and Chinese tour operators can get all the relevant information, not only about the Central and Eastern European, but also about the Chinese tourism supply. Common product development is needed, joint promotional activities, joint marketing activities, so the interests of the individual countries and companies go hand in hand. So we must know this. Every participant has a vital role in this cooperation, because tourism products and services are really created by countries and by companies. And the Tourism Cooperation Center is only there to promote this between the two macro regions, Central and Eastern Europe and China.
Now I will pass the word to Mr. Wei Hongtao. Mr. Wei, you have an extremely powerful name, because Hongtao means a huge wave in Chinese. And it's a huge wave everybody would like to welcome here, not only in Slovenia, but in the whole region. What do you expect from your partners within Europe? How to welcome you, how to cooperate with you to accommodate this huge wave we're so welcoming here?
Yeah, 非常高兴啊，各位女士们、先生们。首先呢，请允许我呢，简单介绍一下目前中国旅游业发展的现状。这个近年来啊，这个在中国政府的大力支持下，中国旅游业的发展呢，维持了稳定快速的发展势头。去年中国旅游业总收入是3.38万亿元人民币，国内旅游的人数呢达到了36.11亿人次，出境旅游人数呢是1.07亿人次，入境过夜人数呢
Inbound overnights
约呢
visitors
5562万人，
55.62 million.
旅游外汇收入呢是
Exchange
569 亿
from
美
tourism
元，
has been
境外旅游消费超过了
$56.9 billion.
1600多亿美元。
Outbound tourism consumption is over 160
目前中
billion.
国呢已经成为
China
世
has
界
been
第一大
the
出
biggest
境
outbound
旅游消费国
consuming country
及世界第4大
and the fourth
入
biggest
境旅游接待
inbound
国，
tourism receiving country,
并拥有世界最
and
大
at the
的
same time
国内旅游市
with
场。
the biggest domestic
这是
tourism
目前
market.
中国旅游业的总体的这么一个
This is a general overview of the Chinese actual situation.
近几年呢，
Recently,
中国和中东欧国家的这个经济、政治、人文等领域合作呢也不断深化。
there is more and more cooperation between China and CDE countries.
中国与各国的旅游领域的交流呢也不断取得新的成绩，特别
There are
是
new fruitful
中国、
fruit
中
between
东
China and
欧
CDE
国家旅
countries,
游促进机构与企业联合会的这个成立，
especially the TCC,
及中国与中东欧国家旅游部门首次高级别对话的举
and
行，
also the first high-level dialogue between China and CEE countries.
为各方进一步发展旅游领域合作奠定了良好的基础。
And this is a very basic thing for both sides.
今年呢是中国中东欧国家旅游合
This
作
year
促进年，
is for the important year between China and CEE countries.
中国与中东国家本着优势互补、信息共享、
These
客源
countries,
互送、
they go together hand by hand
诚信友好、
to have a good
平等互利、
good help, and in the same level they
合作
help
共
each
赢的原
other,
则，
and they under this principle are working together.
共同开展了一系列富有成效的交流活动。
They will try to have new movements and new exchange between partners in the future.
这些活动的成功举办，
The success of this
扩大了中国和中东国
these
家之间
activities
的
has
旅游往来，
helped to increase
在各国人文和
the knowledge
民间
between people and
交流中架起了友谊的桥梁。
has increased the possibilities of
增进了各国人民之间相互的了解和互
And also
信，
to have the better understanding between each other.
为中国与中东各国的关系健康发展
And the healthy
新的活
relationship
力。
development between China and CEE countries.
总体目前
Mr. Wei, this is definitely the start. Getting communication into run, getting known ourselves better. But what are your goals within this cooperation between China and this part of Europe? What do you expect from us to do for you?
这个在旅游这个方面啊，这个从目前的这个中国的这个情况呢，就是随着经济的发展和这个中国应该讲中国人民生活水平的不断提高，中国出境旅游的人数会不断的增
so
长。
this kind of all the people outgoing
这
tourists
个从目前看呢，中国公
will
民
increase.
出境旅游会对出境的旅游的目的地
So
也会
thus
有
increasing,
越来
they will
越多样的
they
选
will
择
want to
和
have
它
different
的
destinations
它的
and
变化。
different visit
我
different
相信
countries.
呢，
I believe
随着中国公民出境游的日益增多，会越来越多的
that
中
they
国公
will
民
be
选择
able
了
to choose
前
and
往
they will choose
更
this
多的旅游目的地，
these new
包括
parts, and this of course
中东国
means
家。
these CEC countries regions.
针对这个游客
Regarding the
出行
tourist,
是吧？他会受很多的条件的
how
制约和限
that
制
he
和
will
限
come,
制，
the
比如
tourist will
说
come. There's a lot of
我们有的目的地的知名度啊，
there's how famous the
交
destination
通条
is,
件、
what is the transport
签证政策、
facilities, what are the visa policies,
市场推广啊
how well is the
安全环境
marketed,
等
is
诸多因素的
it
影
is
响
it，safe? These are
都会
all
有
the things
不同的
that
选择。
attract and the
我相
Chinese tourists will
信
look
这
for.
个中东国家的旅游资源应该是
I know
非常
that
丰
the
富，
CEC
自
countries
然与人文
have
景
a
色
lot of
也
natural
独一魅
and
力。
cultural
应该讲，
resources, very
对中
beautiful
国的游客呢
places,
会有
which I'm
非常
sure
大的
that
吸引力。
Chinese
啊
people
我们
are
跟中
attracted
东国
to
家
it.
的合作呢，应该讲呢，
And how to cooperate.
我们这个也是呢，采取了多项措
So
施，比
in
如
this
说
way we had some
这
measures
个
and new policies to help.
2014年
In
12月，我
in
们
the
中国国务院总理李克强
in
与
the
中东各国
minister
领导人共同发表了
had
中国中东国
proposed
家合
an
作
idea of
贝尔格莱德
in the
纲要
Belgrade.
还宣布了2015年是中国和中东国家的旅游
2015should
合
be
作
the
的
year of
促
promoting
进年，这都是为了
this connection between
能够增
CEC
加
countries
中国
and
和中东国家之间的
and
互相的
China.
了解和互
This
信
was all
啊，
the
加强
first
我们
step
共同
to
的合
help
作
us to better
啊
understanding.
推动我们这个中国和中东国家
And
共同
thus,
携手
and
一起
thus help each other to
着眼长
become
远，
better
共同发展，
and
共同
together
美
to
好
have
一个良好的市
and
场。
to have
这是
to develop
和
this
我们
healthy
共
market.
同的目标，
This
为
is
双向的旅游交流市场
The
的
idea
健康发展
in the
工作
tourism
伙伴
also
之间互相共同
how
努力。
to together work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wu. Now, we have a minister here. our Minister of Economy, who has a background in tourism for more than a decade as a tourist manager, a manager of a very interesting tourism destination, a spa. Now you have been the minister for a year. Combining those experiences you have on both sides, what do you miss right now to achieve these goals we were speaking about, having a new kind of partnership between global regions such as Europe and Asia Pacific?
Thank you. At first, I have to say that on this side is much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But on another side is much more normal. Firstly, I have to say that partnership and cooperation in the economy is not the Slovenian national sport.
Mm-hmm.
We are much more individual oriented, and this has also an influence on the economy. On the other side, the tourism is a branch where the cooperation and teamwork is very important, and tourists today are very demanding. And the demands are possible to be solved only with teamwork and with cooperation. We have also some good examples here in Slovenia, partnerships within the destination, then the cooperation or partnership between local, regional and national tourist organizations, cross-border and public-private partnerships, and at the end also the international cooperation. Partnerships within the destination, we have here a few good examples. I can mention only two. At first, Ljubljana, our capital, they had and they still have big increase in income, and this is a result of good cooperation within this destination. The other one example is destination Početrtek, where I come from, and they connected pretty well the offer between main company, between private entrepreneurs and between the local community. And we have a lot of reserve to improve this cooperation in all other areas in Slovenia. Then we have a huge task to improve our promotion and investment in promotion in abroad through Slovenian National Tourist Board, who is responsible for this promotion. The regional tourist organization, they must to connect the offer within the region and to promote the region also in near abroad. And at the end, the local tourist organizations with companies, they have or they must promote and sell their services under umbrella of National Tourist Board on foreign markets. Because of that domestic market is for growth and for development of Slovenian tourism too small.
Mm-hmm.
We are much more export-oriented country, also in tourism, than other countries in our surrounding. On cross-border cooperation, we have one big surprise, a little miracle, the cooperation between Slovenia and Croatia on Far East markets, for example, China and Japanese. With Croatia, otherwise, we agree on the fact that we don't agree on anything. That's why we have to upgrade this project, experience Croatia and feel Slovenia, and I think that this is task for me and my colleague in Croatia, Mr. Darko Lorecin, Minister for Tourism. I think that he will come here a little bit later today afternoon. At the end, this international cooperation, the best example is or will be at tomorrow's session 16+1, and the result will be better income, as Mr. Rusinko said, on both sides, on Chinese and on our East European and Central European country. Thank you.
So, bottom line is, miracles do happen, but only in tourism so far. Okay, now before we go to the questions from the floor, I'll just make a very brief and speedy round regarding this mindset, because it's apparently not only a Slovenian problem, that it's quite difficult to find ways between ministries, between countries to cooperate. Mr. Rotun Silvan, it is you who actually opened this problem, that it's so difficult to find a common position to play, let's say, for the same team. Who is the one, which sector is the one who should actually trying to bring about this miracle, to change this?
I think normally at the end there is a need for having sufficient commitment for those who can take decisions, and those who can take decisions are normally the higher level possible in the governments and in the businesses. So if there was sufficient commitment and willingness, but starting by a sufficient understanding of the need to cooperate, of the fact that any business and any government cannot move forward in this to 21st century world and society with all the different challenges that we are. If they are convinced that they are not able to go along and to deal with individual, let's say, tools, they should be the ones who should give the sufficient clear instructions and to attract sufficient commitment for all the players. It's difficult because Europe, at European level, we are a very complex region with many member states. Each member state is within it is organized in many different ways. The big ones, but also the smaller ones also. So, and even we see that even between close partners or member states like Slovenia and Croatia, the relationship is difficult. So I think it should start from the top, but also it should also start and the new markets, the new tools, the digital tools, the new tourists can and maybe should facilitate this process of cooperation, because now the tourists, any of us is much well informed, is much more digitally skilled. The less young ones like me and others maybe less, but the young tourists are much more individualistic. They know what they want, and they know which type of experience that they would like, and there should be a kind of mixture between leadership in the top and also participation and involvement of the new tourists and the new players, not forgetting what the colleague from PATA said. We have to involve, and also Marshall has mentioned it, and Alain, we have to involve all the stakeholders, not only the business and the governments, but also the civil society ones, the academia. We have not touched upon one very important thing, the skills of the workforce. New tourism products demand new skills in the employees of the steel businesses, both in private and public domain. So that's another topic we have not to forget.
Mr. De Brouw, we heard Mr. Ortoon, he's coming from Brussels, but he's speaking quite openly, which is quite rare. So he says Europe is complicated. You were a little bit more diplomatic. You said Europe is mature. But are we too mature to be open to this cooperation within our own continent, and especially between global regions?
Well, in fact, I was speaking about mature tourism destination, not
Okay.
necessarily about EU countries and so on, because many of the EU countries are also OECD countries. But I think starting from the perspective of National Tourism Administration, which I think many of us are or represent, I think the starting point is definitely for the highest level of tourism policy makers to fully understand, the complexity of tourism development, and how different policies should join, to be efficient in terms of tourism development. Because, as we understand, tourism alone will not be able, to make tourism industry as performant as we would like to see, as sustainable as we would like to see, and so on and so on. So I think the first thing from our perspective is knowledge, understanding how tourism is developing, what are the linkages and the trade-off. And going from there, I think the best to start partnership is definitely, I would say, a project, And take the issue, for example, of visa and travel facilitation. For many years, we have been discussing these issues with different governments, but things were just not mature enough, and tourism was maybe not fully understanding all the issues, and tourism was not sitting at the table of foreign affairs, interior ministries, and so on, And in the last 10 years, when you see all the developments which happened, because in some countries, like United States and some others, tourism has been able to put it up front, in the discussion on visa issues, we were able collectively to move with this agenda, and we could speak for hours on this. But I think the project was mature enough. The understanding of tourism policy makers was becoming quite clear, on what can be done and how to make things moving. We in tourism, we do not develop visa policy, for example, but we in tourism, visa policy has an important economic impact on tourism. What type of impact is this? And European Commission also in revising its visa regime has been also taking the economic agenda on board. So I think this is a better understanding of the issues, and then ensuring that with this understanding we can sit intelligently, at the table of with other policymakers to make our policies more performant, I would say.
Which is a big challenge to sit intelligently.
But this works for some projects.
Okay,
Yeah.
sometimes. Mr. Rotun, before I pass...
Yes, I just wanted to react on this to show the complexity. This is a key example, the visa issue. We have been working within the European Commission, fighting with our colleagues in charge of the home affairs and on the visa policy as such. We have been working with UNWTO, with OECD. We have been issuing economic analysis and so on. And we have made a proposal 1.5 years ago, more or less, at Commission level. But the fact is that this proposal of the Commission is being discussed in the Council of Ministers and in the Parliament. And in the Council of Ministers, the things have been discussed by the Home Affairs and Immigration experts. And our ministers, your tourist ministers, have not been able, in most of the cases, to convince of the importance of a sufficient flexibility, of a sufficient facilitation, of a sufficient liberalization of the visa policy with all the security issues taken into account. And we are coming back to the origin. So at the end, we have done joint good work in the Commission with international organizations, within the industry. The visa issue is the only, to my memory, the only big policy issue in which all tourism, transport, and fashion, food industries have worked together and have issued joint common issues. But at the end, the ones who will decide on the Commission proposal will be the Council of Ministers, represented by the Home Affairs Ministries or the Foreign Affairs Ministries and the European Parliament. And we are not yet there. And so there's still a need to improve and to consolidate and to stabilize this growing partnership. We are not yet there. I'm sorry to be a bit more, I prefer to be blunt and realistic.
Yeah.
We are not yet there, even though it was a very good attempt, and I think we have done a good job, most of us, but we are not yet there. Huh?
But hopefully the stress is on not yet. Not yet there. Mr. Favilo, what is your view on this? Because you also have a lot of experience with other regions of the world. Do we have any examples we could follow in this from other parts?
Okay, yes. Coming back with the issue of partnership and cooperation. Yes, first, what makes the miracle? That was a previous question you made. I think the need makes the miracle. Mm-hmm. And the need makes, let's say, some political leadership have the vision that they have, they should, and they can cooperate. And cooperation and doing, let's say, developing partnership does not mean that countries or companies will not compete anymore. Mm-hmm. They may compete in certain markets and be together in other markets. I think that the example given by the Minister of Slovenia, in the case of Slovenia and Croatia, was very clear on that. The two countries may be competing in important source markets in Europe, but they are working together in long-haul source markets. And this case specifically, we've seen in other parts of the world. For example, in my own region of origin, the Mercosur countries, specifically Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, they have created a promotion, tourism promotion office in Japan, where there is one person chosen by the four that represents the four countries. Mm-hmm. And because people coming from Japan to the region, they want to visit different countries, not only one. So they've seen, well, in that destination, in that source, in that source market, we can even have a common, let's say, a common office, and one person, not four persons, representing the four countries. And obviously Brazil and Argentina, they compete not only in football very much, but in other source markets as well. In Central America, that's another very important case. They are small countries. Alone, they are very weak, very fragile. They are not. They do not have the means to promote themselves individually. But when they go to international fairs, whether it's Fitur in Madrid, a very important market, source market for them, or London, WTM, or ITB in Berlin, they come under Central America. Mm-hmm. They are within the same space. They have, let's say, a bigger setting, but under this bigger setting, they keep their individuality. Mm-hmm. They present themselves individually, but they are seen also as a multi-destination. Mm-hmm. So this has worked very much for these countries. I think that with the continuous growth of tourism, more and more products that are developed, people are traveling from a younger age to an older age, more and more. So there's so much room for cooperation, for partnership, and countries and companies can really do it. Whether they will be under a common brand, well, that's a much bigger step than promoting multi-destinations or common products. You can do different things. There are different degrees of partnering together, and you must build with time, and that's only time allows it to build trust, confidence. That was one of the issues Alain presented in his presentation. That is key for long-standing partnerships.
We've heard the bells. It means that we should open the floor to the public. But before that, I would like just to ask Mr. Ardi, because you're so much into the Asian Pacific perspective. It's a young region in any way we look at. And you said that you learn a lot from the European tourism. But what can we learn from you?
Sure. I'd just like to go back to your original question just for a second. You know, in terms of partnership, there are 3 key words to any successful partnership: vision, leadership, compromise. If you can achieve all of these 3, you will have a successful partnership, regardless if it's private, public, public-private, or combinations of all of these. You need these 3 key elements to actually make it work. And there are many examples of very successful destinations who have that type of partnership. And I'll share one with you, but there are many others. Guam Visitor Bureau. Guam is a small island in the Pacific. The way they're actually organized is that the board, the executive who manage the Visitor Bureau, are actually from the private sector. The ones who actually fund the activities and leads and manage the promotion of the Guam Visitor Bureau are actually from the public sector. That is a public-private partnership that actually works really well, because there's an interest from the private sector to making it a success. Because obviously they want to fill in their hotels, they want to fill in their planes, they want to have visitors to guide around the islands and do other activities. It's a combination of both of those together. So I think there are examples in the world where this public-private partnership actually can and actually does work. And there are actually good examples out there, like Guam Visitor Bureau and others.
Great, thank you very much. Now we open the floor for questions from our audience. We have a quarter of an hour of time before we start with the dinner, which is really fine, but more details on later. Please.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's over 12 o'clock. Dear Mr. Minister Počevalšek, dear distinguished guests, my name is Igor Jurisic. I'm president of Slovenia News Hostel Organization. And of course, cooperation is our blood, but I'm not going to talk about ourselves. But I would rather ask a question to Mr. Wei Hong Tao. Namely, in the last weeks, we are looking in a bit cooling down of Chinese economy, dropping stock market indexes, also devaluation of yuan, and in this sense, do you think that it could just in general slow down and drop down the numbers of Chinese travelers to Europe, and we in Eastern Europe or Central Europe should take it as a challenge? Or you might see that that this will only lead Chinese tourists to select for more affordable destinations, as our region is, and we can take it as a big opportunity. This answer would help a lot in planning of our activities. Thank you very much.
This point about renminbi.
和包括中国 A 股股市确实也大幅度的下跌，应该讲肯定会对中国公民这个出境的消费能力
outside the tourism. But from the situation now, there is no evident decrease in the tourism. Not even to the Eastern Europe or the Western Europe. The market, of course, the whole markets will have the effect, but I have not seen any change, any big change in the upcoming markets.
So, optimistic planning still applies. Next question.
You don't see me.
Yes, of course, Mrs. Purk.
You are behind the beautiful flower. Good afternoon. My name is Danica Purk. I'm president of IDC Bled School of Management. Here in Bled, not far from the Congress Center is our school. After 29 years of existence, in fact after 27, 2 years ago, we decided that we shall do something more for the society, and not only for Slovenian society, but also for Croatia, because you were mentioning already how we are in fact cooperating these two countries, and we should. And so we were talking with Mr. Lorenzin, the minister, who is also our former student. We were talking with him and with Slovenian minister how to make education and today for better management of tourism. And today, unfortunately, I I learned a lot from you all, and thank you very much for that, but I didn't hear anything. How do you imagine to educate people, managers in tourism for new trends? How to, how they should really, and you were talking about public-private partnership, which is also very important. So what I see as a person, as a citizen of this country, is that we are, and also of others here around in Central and Eastern Europe, that we are really not having good leaders in the business, and business leaders in tourism, and that we are in any case so lacking the leadership and managerial skills, and lacking also the knowledge of the trends in tourism. So I would like to hear a little bit more about that, and of course I would like to see, we brought professors from all over the world to talk about digitalization, marketing, etc. But we are still waiting for students because they don't have time, they don't have money, they don't have anything, in fact. So I'm a little bit scared for the future, about the future of tourism in this part of the world, looking to the fact how we are knowledgeable and everything else what I mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, Duisburg, it's a free country. You can choose a gentleman to answer your question.
Everybody is very competent there, so I would like to hear 2 or 3 opinions at least.
Mr. Favila will be the first.
Okay, I volunteer. Okay, thank you very much for a question. This is a very important one. And indeed, one of the first things I learned about Bled was your higher education institute here that has really had people from many different countries studying here, and they are leaders in different fields back in their own countries. This is a challenge for in terms of tourist management. It's also a challenge, but we see very interesting cases, examples in different parts of the world. Yes, our sector needs to have to be able to develop more and more strategic thinking, understanding the sector. Our sector is so diverse that many times it's very difficult to understand, even for not only for, let's say, people that are not involved directly with tourism, but those that work with tourism. So from UNWTO, we stimulate the development of higher education in tourism. We have an initiative that's it's called the TED-Qual initiative, which is the certification of higher education programs in tourism, and we stimulate the cooperation, the partnership between organizations that are dedicated to that. There are higher education institutions around the world that are considered of very high quality. So you probably are already engaged in this cooperation. I would, let's say, stimulate you to pursue in that path. And yes, we need managers in our sector, but also in not only in the private sector, but also in governments.
people that are able to understand strategically and the possibilities of our sector. There is not just one formula, but definitely our sector needs that type of development, high education thinking and management. And I would like to congratulate you for your efforts and for the good name that your institution has.
Thank you very much, Mr. Favila, for volunteering. We would like to give another question a chance, if there is one. Yes, a lady? Ladies always have to have the last word in Slovenia, so it will be our last question.
I'm Marcela from Colombia, and I'm the founder of a new program called On Board, and we try to experiment using traveling as the most authentic way to learn. We have struggled finding our way in the industry, in the tourism industry, because it's big, it's a monster, and we're small, right? And we actually choose Slovenia as our second destination to travel. We struggle, as I said, finding the participants, but what I see is, and we do most of the things you say. We promote the country, we use diversification, we support independent tourism, we activate the local economy, plus we're mixing a group of 25 people from different countries. So it sounds very, very cool, if you want to call it like that, because it's from young people, new trend, new tourists, remote workers, digital nomads, gap year, like it's really broad. But what I'm seeing is, if we're talking about partnerships, I'm seeing that since organizations or programs like this are also so new, it's hard for the government, for the public, for the private sector to see these as opportunities, these potential partnerships that will bring a lot of good things as opportunities. So is it because it is not a massive travel tourism industry and these kind of opportunities are left behind, or is it because maybe they don't know how to understand that this is a potential opportunity, or maybe it's the mistake of entrepreneurs knocking the wrong doors? So it's my question.
Okay. Nice.
And I'm happy to tell about On Board later to all the ones who are interested.
Okay, nice last question. Well,
Thank you.
Mr. RD will take it.
Yep. Thank you for your feedback. Actually, I'm always fascinated by youth, and we, in our organization, we have interns actually come from all over the world, a lot from South America actually, by the way, who come to our office and spends a few months with us. This initiative was started over a year ago. We had unofficially interns before, but officially we started our program a year ago. Anyway, to make a long story short, we've organized these internships for a couple of reasons. One, to give an opportunity for young people to learn about the industry and what it is to offer. And I'd like to remind everyone that our industry is no different than any others in terms of jobs. We need finance directors, we need IT people, we need HR people, we need accountants. We have all the same positions available than any other industries. It's just that we focus on one specific area, which is actually the fun part of the industry, which is traveling. So all young people, please do join our organization, join the industry, because we're actually a fun industry to work with. But additionally, also I would encourage every organization, both public and private. This is something I've learned from a TED Talk, actually was watching a few months ago. And actually does work, and it is wonderful. In every meeting that you have, make it a point to bring someone young into your organization, either a student, even from outside of your industry, to come in and join the meetings and give you their perspective. And you will see how different things are. Their creativity is phenomenal. And then we do this in our organization when we have our meetings. We bring young people into the meetings to give us a different perspective. They look at it from a completely different way. And more and more, when we look at the travelers, the millennials are the future travelers in our industry. And we need to pay more attention to them. So I congratulate you on your initiative with the On Board program. I'd certainly like to know more about it later on. But again, my word of advice to you, do involve young people in your organization on a day-to-day basis, and you'll see a difference.
Which is a fantastic way to end the discussion. Thank you very much. We've learned a lot. We know, and we saw that the direction is really good, that things are changing also in our region, thanks to new initiative. We still need time to get know each other, but of course, with the help of young people, we'll probably be ready for this challenge to make tourism in the world better, which would mean, of course, to make our world better. And tourism could be really a decisive driving force in that. So I thank you so much for your kind cooperation and a lot of information you gave us. We're ready now for dinner. I would only ask Mr. Favila and Mr. Ardi to stay with me and to go to the press conference room, because there are people of the press waiting for some additional answers. It is a very interesting thing in Slovenia. We say dober tek, it means a good run, but it means bon appetit actually in Slovenia. Another element to fall in love with Slovenia. And because we like food very much, and we extremely like fantastic food, I'm really proud to present two chefs who will be in charge of you in the minutes to come. One of the most important chefs in Slovenia, Mr. Janez Bratovž and Mr. Simon Bertoncel. Please come on stage. So Janez, sorry to see his, he's one of the most famous ones in Slovenia. He has his own restaurant called JB. He's one of the top chefs in Europe, and Simon is a little bit younger. He's the Grand Chef here at the Grand Hotel Toplice, and also a member of the Slovenian National Chefs team, which is very, very, very successful in Europe and in the world. Janez, what could you tell us about the service you will offer us today?
Jaz, če bi lahko, se slišimo, če bi lahko pozdravil dame, gospode, goste, ministre. Mi smo pripravili danes jagenjčka, pa ličnice, špinačne njoke, sprekajeno skuto. Moram pa nekaj reči, da sem zelo vesel, da sem danes tukaj in da se toliko veliko govori po svetu o hrani, še posebno o zdravi prehrani. Letos je celo Expo je bila namenjena ta tema. Jaz sem zdajle pred 2 dnevi prišel z Maroka, kjer sem predstavljal na enem zelo visokem nivoju slovensko kuhno. Naslednji teden grem v Istanbul, 20. oktobra imam pa eno res top prezentacijo za vse najboljše hotele v Hongkongu, tako da sem vesel, da se hrana toliko poudarja, ker jaz mislim, da je to ena najbolj pomembnih stvari. Želim vam potem dober tek, zdaj bo pa še Simon nekaj povedal.
Okay, I will translate it later, summarize it a little bit. Thank you, Janez.
Pozdravljeni tudi v mojem imenu, tudi mi kot hiša gostiteljice smo pripravili nekaj dobrot lokalnih, na malo bolj modern način, malo sofisticirano boste poskusili zadeve. Tudi mi pač strmimo, spremljamo trende v svetu, se pravi, tudi kar boste poskušali danes je nekako tako obarvano. Zadeve so malo na modern način zapeljane, uporabljene so pa tradicionalne slovenske surovine. Tako da dober tek. Vsem skupaj.
Okay, thank you very much. That you understood already. Dober tek, it means bon appetit. Well, Janez, he just came from Morocco, where he was presented on a very high level event. He's going very soon to Istanbul, and we'll have a really big presentation in Hong Kong to come, so he's conquering Asia already. He's extremely happy to have you here. He's a big representative of healthy food, and he thinks that this element of food is also very, very important. Of course, Simon is a little bit younger. He's the host chef of the hotel, and they also prepared something really interesting for you. I will try to say what you will see, what you will eat, for of course. Slowly baked lamb, spinach gnocchi, pork cheeks, presented by Janez and Simon. Bertoncel, the Bohin trout, local trout here, not from the lake, but from another one, which is also very beautiful. Then a slow-cooked leg of veal in own sauce with thyme, marinated sea bass. I can't do it because I'm getting hungry already. So thank you very much for your kind assistance. Thank you very much to the panel. So enjoy the taste of Slovenia and give tourism a chance. That of course was a message to all politicians. Thank you and enjoy the beautiful day, the last summer day of the year at Lake Bled. Goodbye.